Hello, my name is Nick, and welcome to part 2 of Rorschach is the Hero, Watchmen, and here's why. Here I'll go into a little more detail, cover the rest of what I didn't cover in part 1, which is just taking Rorschach through the hero's journey. And I encourage you to watch part 1 if you didn't already. I'll try not to retread any of the same ground. In part 2, I will attempt to solidify my argument that Rorschach is the hero of Watchmen. But I don't just mean he's the best of a flawed lot, as many people have commented that no one is a hero in Watchmen, or that Watchmen is about showing the fallacy in the concept of superheroes. Watchmen is a deconstruction of superheroes, and this does not mean destruction of them, but rather a disassembly of them and a careful examination of the parts. It's the difference between smashing a radio and taking one apart to see how it works. There are many definitions of hero, but the one I want to focus on is that the hero is the character who opposes the villain. It's often said that a hero is measured best by the villains or threats he faces. After all, what would Superman be without Lex Luthor? What would Batman be without the Joker? So first and foremost, let us define and... what did I write there? The villain of Watchmen. Examine the villain of Watchmen, Adrian Veidt, also known as Ozymandias, and I prefer to refer to him as Adrian because Ozymandias was his hero name, and I no longer feel he deserves it. Many people have argued to me that Adrian is not the villain, that he saved the world and might therefore be the hero. So to a large extent, the crux of the question is, was he right about Armageddon? And even if he was, do the ends justify the means? Let's examine the evidence. Was nuclear war that assured? The last time we see Nixon contemplating launching the nukes, they're at DEFCON 2. His mood seems calm, and the United States has not even used conventional means to engage the Russians. Honestly, it doesn't seem that imminent a threat, but Adrian is so convinced that he can read the future, so convinced that he is right, that he enacts his plan as a preemptive strike. I think his arrogance cannot be overstated. After all, in our real world, we have missile defense systems just as effective as Dr. Manhattan, who is stated in the book to be estimated to be capable of stopping only 60% of the Russian missiles. So his existence, the major difference between our two worlds, isn't really that much of a factor when comparing our two worlds. We have in reality come far closer to potential nuclear war with Russia. One incident comes to mind when the Russian systems even mistakenly identified an American launch aimed at them, yet men of good conscience still did not retaliate, and the crisis was averted. There's a video on YouTube about it if you want to know more, the day the world almost ended, or something to that effect. So I say that Adrian's murder of 3 million innocent people was premature and unnecessary, based on just the reality of the situation and our own real-world history. But there's also a thematic connection backing me up here. The tale of the Black Freighter, the pirate story, is clearly an allegory of Adrian's moral downfall, in which a marooned man, convinced of the threat to his hometown, makes his way home through ghoulish means on a raft of corpses, and being convinced that his town has already fallen to pirates, becomes a murderer of 2 innocent people and very nearly kills his own family, going so far as to attack his wife. Adrian even tells John at the end that he dreams of swimming towards a great black ship, the exact fate of the maddened sailor, in the end of the Black Freighter story. It is my contention that Alan Moore is telling us through subtext that Adrian's conviction is similarly wrong, and that he has become a monster unnecessarily. Isn't the road to hell paved with good intentions? In the words of the damned sailor, how have I come to this dark place with love? Only love is my guide. With this, I make my case that Adrian is the undisputed villain of Watchmen, and that by being the only one to oppose him from beginning to end and to his final breath, Rorschach is the hero of Watchmen. But before I move on, let's just say nuclear war was at some point inevitable. How much evil would that excuse? Because I really want to put to bed the idea that Adrian is in any way a hero or a savior. If nuclear war was coming, it was in large part because Adrian made Dr. Manhattan leave Earth with his cancer plot. So he helped to cause the very thing he claims to have averted. And that he did it by giving several innocent people cancer is just icing on the evil cake. Also, in addition to the 3 million New Yorkers he kills, Adrian constructed a lethal pyramid of killers killed by other killers, capped off with murdering his loyal servants in Karnak, who he poisons. His whole conspiracy. He also uses his own assistant as a human shield against the assassin that he hired to attack himself for no other reason than to keep Rorscach off his trail. No one else is even investigating him at that point. Oh yeah, and he kills Bubastis when he attempts to kill John, the only murder he seems remotely remorseful of. Fuck you, Adrian. The capstone of my argument is this. There have been many powerful men throughout history who have killed millions in the name of building and shaping a better world through the power of fear, but I think one can stand for them all. Adrian's great plan, as one commenter actually called it, reminds me of nothing so much as Hitler's final solution. Decide for yourself if I've gone too far with that last point. The name Hitler's tossed around a lot. But I think I've made my case. So with this great a villain, how great a hero does that make Rorscach, who, with little more than his wits and his fists, unravels Adrian's plot, and very likely exposes it to the world? And before you point out that the benefit of the peace he has achieved, it wouldn't last forever, not without him dropping another squid bomb whenever tensions between nations rose again. True, Night Owl is instrumental in the final phase of the investigation, but Rorscach is the driving force, and Dan would never have become involved without him. I'd like to point out here a minor addition, simply that Watchmen is a murder mystery, and the detective is usually the hero of any such story. Night Owl ends up getting pretty heroic, so couldn't he be the hero? I mean, he doesn't even kill criminals like Rorscach does. I would agree that Dan is a hero, but he is not the hero. Why? Because he fails. He falters at the most crucial moment, like John and Laurie. They all agree to cover up Adrian's crimes, and thus they become complicit. Rorscach is the only one who refuses to compromise his morals. His sense of justice is too strong, and he would rather die than give it up. That's a hero in my eyes. As he himself says, there is good and there is evil, and evil must be punished. I will not compromise in this, even in the face of Armageddon. Who watches the Watchmen? Rorscach does. However, of course, he is not without flaws. This discussion would not be complete without acknowledging and addressing them, as many people cite the flaws as reasons not to view him as a hero. First, he is obviously a misogynist. There is no disputing that. But given his upbringing, his extremely abusive mother, abusive to an extreme degree both physically and mentally, on such a consistent basis, I think it's at least understandable, if not forgivable. At least he doesn't let it affect his work, though. It is mostly expressed in his language and opinions. He enjoys punishing the evil of rapists, who mostly target women. The kidnapping case was an attempt to rescue a young girl. He even offers self-respect proper respect, though perhaps grudgingly after being chided by Dan. Secondly, is he a racist? I've seen this misapprehension quite a bit, but I've found absolutely no evidence that it is true. He chooses to read The New Frontiersman, and in one editorial article, the publisher does make mention of and defend the early actions of the Ku Klux Klan in the context of talking about masked people operating as vigilantes. However, there is no evidence that Rorscach shares this opinion. Do we all agree with every single thing in the news that we choose to consume? His politics are right-wing, and this paper is his only option. Rorscach is disgusted with the human race as a whole. He does not make distinctions of color or nationality. The closest he ever gets is even mentioning nationalities, mentioning that hookers offer him French love and Swedish love, but not American love. American love, he says, is like Coke in glass bottles. They don't make it anymore. Thirdly, he mentions one time that Adrian may possibly be a homosexual, and reminds himself to investigate. At first blush, this may appear to be homophobia, but you must consider the context of the times. Common right-wing thinking in the 80s at the time associated liberalism, homosexuality closely with communism. I don't pretend to understand why, but it is clear in media from the era. Adrian being a possible homosexual means nothing in a criminal context, unless you consider that it may be a link to communism, which Rorscach opposes on patriotic grounds. That's my defense, take it or leave it. I know it's not rock solid. In any case, it never comes up again. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, Rorscach is a killer. In fact, that he only kills those who repeatedly hurt others may or may not disqualify him as a hero in your eyes. I can't tell you what to think. I can only tell you what I think. And I think he's exactly like the Punisher in his morality. I think that Alan Moore depicts a world with many irredeemably evil criminals who deserve the punishment Rorscach metes out. Rorscach and the Punisher and people like Wolverine are anti-heroes, and there are many more besides them. He is not psychotic and does not kill indiscriminately. Which brings me to number 5, his mental state. I believe he is very stable mentally. He has simply made the conscious decision to identify his mask as his true face and his hero personality as his true self. He does so knowingly and on purpose as a response to seeing the depths of darkness in humanity. He even says in explanation, "Now I'm not part of the human race. Not anymore." I must confess that I felt very similarly in my teenage years as I learned of all the atrocities to which humanity has subjected itself. I've grown since then, but I still remember and understand exactly how he felt. If that's crazy, then to not want to be part of that, then I question the value of being sane. I'd like to point out that the hero's self-identification is a trait shared by Batman, though he isn't as transparent about it. And so I've come to my conclusion. If I haven't convinced you by now that Rorscach is the hero of Watchmen, perhaps the hero that world needs and deserves, then I guess I never will. If you disagree, please leave your reasons why in the comments. If I missed anything, please feel free to point it out. For this series, I tried to only use what information was in the original comic, but there's more evidence in the prequel comics, the Xbox Live Arcade games, which depict his earlier career. If you like these videos, think about subscribing, as I've enjoyed this so much I intend to continue and review and analyze every piece of Watchmen media that exists. Because when I get into a universe, I go all the way in. Just because I love comics and I love this universe. I love both Doomsday Clock and the new TV show, the movie and the games, and the prequel comics. For as limited as it is compared with other comic universes, I find it to be especially rich and deep. I mean, all this from 6 major characters? That's something. So I hope you enjoyed watching these videos as much as I enjoyed making them, and as always, I thank you for your time.